The session is going to be moderated by our very able and dynamic Joint Secretary MNRE, Shri Dinesh Jagdale. Ladies and gentlemen, prior to joining the ministry, he has spent his initial 10 years of his career as a renewable energy professional in the wind industry. He has contributed to the growth of wind sector across multi-states in India. He's known for his thorough knowledge on the process related to regulatory, permitting and licensing across all the renewable states. Our panelists who are going to be joining us in this panel discussion, Mr. Amit Kansal, he's the Managing Director and CEO of Senvion India, having more than 25 years of experience with the last 15 years dedicated to electricity and renewable energy industry. He earlier was the country manager for Vestas India, and he's also spent 17 years at Honeywell Inc. Mr. Bimal Jindal, our next panelist, he's the Chief Operating Officer at Welspun New Energy Limited, focusing on renewable energy, green hydrogen and its derivatives, having more than 22 years of diversified experience at decision-making roles in green hydrogen projects, power plants across solar, wind, hybrid, hydro, thermal and gas. Also worked in sectors of airports and in the oil and gas projects. Our next panelist is going to be Mr. Jayarama Prasad Chalasani, who brings in a lot of rich experience of more than 40 years in the Indian infrastructure industry, transcending a mix of both public and private sector. Worked across companies like NTPC, Reliance Power Limited, Punj, Lloyd, Suzlon, and in this 40 years plus career, he has led business operations across the value chain of the power sector, from generation to retail power distribution. Our next esteemed panelist in the session will be Mr. Mohit Bhargava, the head of the Renewable Energy Division of NTPC Limited. He's also the CEO of NTPC's wholly owned subsidiaries, NTPC Renewable Energy Limited, NTPC Green Energy Limited, having a rich experience of more than 30 years in the power sector. He's spearheading NTPC's energy transition program, which is centered around reducing NTPC's carbon intensity. He's also leading the initiatives of e-mobility, green hydrogen, and waste management solutions at NTPC. So, ladies and gentlemen, with the lineup of our very esteemed, highly experienced speakers and panelists, we begin the panel discussion on accelerating decarbonization through wind energy, and inviting all our panelists and the moderator, Shri Dinesh Jagdale, Mr. Amit Kansal, Mr. Bimal Jindal, Mr. J.P. Chalasani and Mr. Mohit Bhargav. And I hand over to our moderator, Mr. Jagdale sir.
Thank you. So, very good afternoon to all of you. I think after the first two sessions we had, it will be interesting for all of us to now look forward towards the actual realities on ground, and how, as a wind community, we together can accelerate the process of decarbonization by using wind energy. And that's the name of the session today. So it will be very interesting to hear, I think, I'm being blessed to have a wonderful set of panelists today who have, through their career and through their contribution, have led India to achieve this feat, as we have 44 gigawatts of capacity already installed. We successfully, the team has demonstrated manufacturing in India. The team has demonstrated advanced process of decarbonization in India. The OEMs in India, some of them have proven developer models which have raised platforms one after the other. So with this kind of introduction, let us, I think we are running late on this session, but we need to keep some time for us to delve on some important topics around this. So what I will do is, I will ask my panelists to mention about their individual achievements in terms of their company and what their role is in terms of moving towards the decarbonization and achieving the first is the 2030 agenda. And then probably we'll try to peep into the sector issues, sector challenges. I think with the first session saw some very elaborative challenges, but I think we also have, we will be looking at the solutions and targets for us to achieve the Government of India targets. So with this, let me ask my panelists from my right to introduce, and then we'll go from my right to left. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dinesh. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for inviting me for this session to share my views. My name is Bimal Jindal. I'm working as a Chief Operating Officer with Welspun New Energy. Welspun has been into the development business and built a portfolio and sold it long back in 2016. So we are trying to re-enter as a developer. We are focusing on green hydrogen, renewable energy in both solar, wind, hybrid, and RTC. I'm personally working in renewable space for more than a decade, worked in APAC, Middle East, Africa, US markets, and able to, sign the PPAs more than 10 gigawatt across the globe. Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm JP Chulsani, the Group CEO of Suzlon Group. Obviously, I don't think I need to really explain today what we do and what we want to do. We are the market leader today with 33% of the capacity of total cumulative installed capacity in the country. But I think as Girish Bhai spoke and others spoke today, the main aim what we are continuing to do is that carry forward Tulsi Bhai's vision of how do we provide support, leadership for the sector to grow, and how that focus of India-centric technology development than looking outward. So because as we know that we are unique in terms of our wind profiles and wind speeds, therefore we do need a technology which is more India-specific. We take proud that we are the company which has a large in-house R&D, which mainly develops products keeping in view the Indian wind industry, and we will continue to do that. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Amit Kansal, and I'm CEO of Senvion. Senvion was a German company some years back, and before that, it was a Suzlon company. Unfortunately, Senvion GmbH kind of went bankrupt in 2019, and we took it upon us in India to sustain the organization. So it's a unique combination today. The largest R&D center for this Senvion 2 is in India. We innovate in India. We have a German R&D center now restarted, and this is one of the largest investment of any Saudi company in renewable IP. So this is the combination of this company. We take a lot of pride that we make in India for the world, innovate in India, not assembly, not only manufacturing. We innovate in India for the world. This is the important theme of my talk today as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Mohit Bhargav. I head the renewables business at NTPC. First and foremost, thanks to the organizer here for having me on stage. And I don't think I need to introduce NTPC. NTPC is the largest power generating company in the country. We supply almost a quarter of the power generated in the country. And incidentally, almost 90% in terms of capacity out of that is today fossil fuel based. The task in front of NTPC and more specifically in front of the team handling the renewables today is that we create a green portfolio which is almost as large in size as the coal-based portfolio in the next 8 to 10 years. So that's the ask we have in front of us. We are working on that. In terms of broad numbers, we are keeping a target of doing 60 gigawatts by 2030-32. And as on date, we are working on a pipeline of 20 gigawatts. We'll probably get more time to discuss in detail. So we are into solar, wind, we're also into green hydrogen, we're doing hybrid projects, we're doing RTC projects. So I'll probably stop here and maybe take questions when they come around. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you. So I think let's focus on 3 areas in terms of our discussion. Topic is accelerating decarbonization through wind energy. So let us see how do we decarbonize our electrical grid. That is number 1. Number 2 is using this renewable energy, how can we help the industries to decarbonize? And third thing is, how can we bring the small, medium scale MSME sector into the overall ecosystem of decarbonization? So I think let's talk on this, and if time permits, we can have some interactive Q&A questions from the audience as well. So Jalsani Saab, if I start with you, my first question probably, which and I'm sure the audience will like to hear from you is, the government of India has set target of 500 gigawatt of non-fossil to achieve by 2030. Wind energy is going to play an important role. Central Electricity Authority has put some numbers. You know those numbers. We have to achieve our 44, probably we'll have to achieve 100 plus in terms of the installed capacity. Now, I would ask you 2 sets of questions, sub-questions. One is, as a technology player, what would be your role in accelerating this pace to achieve 100 gigawatts? And second, as a technology manufacturer, as a wind turbine manufacturer, how do you see the technology going from here on and helping India in accelerating the pace of installations?
Thank you, Mr. Zigdale. You rightly mentioned CA's report. I think that's which is very, very important for understanding the relevance of reaching 100 gigawatts by 2030, because in India, we're extremely sensitive to tariffs. Tariff velocity is very, very limited for us. If your tariffs go up, then we resort to load shedding than actually supplying the power. What this report says, before I come to the technology, is that they have estimated for 8760 hours in 2030, reason-wise, what is the demand? And not just the demand curve, they went ahead and said that if you want to meet this demand curve, this load curve, what is the least cost options for us to generate power? In that, they came up with wind should be at least 100 gigawatts. So moving from 44 to 100. Therefore, being from the sector, I believe that's important, because it's not just 100 gigawatt is a target or a wish list for us. It is also an important for the point of view of least cost generation for the country. Therefore, the 100 gigawatt becomes very important for us. The technology-wise, obviously, I just go back to 2017. It's not just a technology. There are a couple of things which we need to do for accelerating. We all talk about 2017, FY17, rather 5.5 gigawatts, what we did that year. The reason why we did is that remunerative tariffs, because we had a feed-in tariff system. Then we had multiple states we were developing projects, almost all the 7 states that time now, 8 states we've been developing projects. Third most important thing is that that point of time, the land and connectivity were being provided by the developers. In fact, if you look at that year in the 5.5 gigawatts, between us and Siemens Gamesa, Mr. Ramesh Kamal must be here, market share of more than 70% in that 5.5 gigawatt. That's purely because we were providing the entire end-to-end solutions. Subsequently, we had issues with this 3-4 years. Added to that, what you said is the good sites got exhausted. But now with the efforts of MNRE, you solve the issue of remunerative tariff because we got back into the closed bidding system now. The second is that said multiple state bidding, so therefore we will have projects in multiple states. Those two issues got resolved, but the biggest issue today for us to capacity addition with the technology is, even if people want to do gigawatts and gigawatts, I saw people talking about it, I saw Suman talking about it, is where is the infrastructure, where the sites, how do we create that? Today there are no end-to-end, like somebody can offer saying that this is the site, this is the connectivity. Because entire connectivity today is CTU. State connectivity is much less. Projects what we are doing on the state grids are very, very less. We have our own regulations in terms of CTU connectivity. You need to have PPE or you need to have 50% land. So if you have a connectivity, you may not have a land there. If you have a land there, you may not get the connectivity. So unless we resolve this issue, go back to that model of saying that, where is either through the wind parks or through developers getting connectivity as well as to develop the land, create that ecosystem saying that, okay, this is where the Mr. Suzlon or someone else develop 3 gigawatts of a park here with connectivity, then go and offer, then anybody can do it. That's one thing which we need to do basically. On the technology side of it, obviously the new issue which came up from 2017 to today, which will continue to be there, is good sites have gone away. Okay? Now you're getting into the sites which are not highly productive. That is where I think the wind sector has done is in terms of improving the technology. As I rightly mentioned, which is very, very important for us to notice, I'm not saying because I'm the group CEO of Suzlon, we are unique. Our wind profiles are unique. Our wind speeds are unique in the world. Like even in offshore, if you look at it, people was mentioning, our offshore is completely different. So therefore, you need to design your turbines to suit our specific wind regimes. So that's where I think the technology is coming up. Like we came up with the 3 megawatts, which is a hot product in the market, and we will come up with more products which suit the low wind regimes, converting the sites which were not useful few years back to this. I think technology-wise, I don't think there's an issue, but I hear your point very well, which is very, very important point you made in the morning, is not look at megawatts. Size. Don't look at the size. Saying that it's only 3 megawatt, we need to rush to 5 megawatt is not issue at all. What is most important is what do you have the lowest cost of generation. Stable regime is what is important rather than getting into 5 gigawatts machine or 6 gigawatts machine, because we are different. Our country is different, our wind regimes is different, so technology has to be oriented towards that. I think we are in the right direction with the problems what you're solving. If you also work on the third problem of creating the land and connectivity way of enabling it, I don't see any reason why we can't achieve 100 gigawatts by 2030. I'm pretty confident about it.
Thank you, Chalsani. I think we were all a party to see the change in the bidding guidelines, the revised bidding guidelines were issued. And what does the bidding guideline allow is now that those projects which are already commissioned and supplying power, not with a tied PPA, they can also participate in the bids. There were a few changes in the bidding guidelines. And you highlighted some of the areas related to the execution. Can we go to the developer model where everything is ready, plug and play, the park concept which was going earlier. So my question to Amitji, I think you mentioned about your product, your Make in India concept, the turbine made for India. So we have a target to go. We have brought in some changes that are required for the accelerating the pace at which we can execute. But over the years, and if you look at the kind of bids that were issued and the kind of execution that has happened, what it relates is only, I think, 27% of the bids capacity that were awarded have got commissioned as of now. So we have a long way to go. What, according to you, should be done, or probably you as a manufacturer would expect you yourself and the developers to do to get this execution pace much faster? And are we ready to achieve, are you or the manufacturing community ready to achieve the 100 gigawatt target?
I think that's the first, is it what? I think our first port of call is 100 gigawatt by 2030. Why do we want accelerating the decarbonization? What are we decarbonizing? I mean, India, that way we can take a lot of, kind of comfort that we are 1/4 of China in a per capita carbon footprint. But still, I think it's pretty high, and it is accelerating very fast. 35% of this come from the electricity production. That's what we are to replace polluting electricity generation with wind. That's what we are on. 100 gigawatt by 2030, that's tomorrow. 6 years away. We are 43 gigawatt in the country. And these are the facts we should not forget and we should remember every day. We need 10 gigawatts starting today per annum. How much are we going to do this year? I don't want to speculate, but between 4 to 5 or whatever. We are far away. And that's a tough call. I agree with Mr. Chalsani that there could be a solution where we all can come back to the package solution. But whether the OEM does it or whether our IPP friends do the scope of work to commission a wind project, the scope doesn't change. The problems will be same, what we all face. Execution on the ground is tough for us. We have to, not only the manufacturing, but all the others, line items, whether it's the substation, whether it's the erection, whether it's the right, or whatever it is, has to be executed, either by us or by the IPP or by a developer. It has to be done. That's where we are facing a problem. Is manufacturing an issue? Is the capacity an issue? No. India has over 10 plus gigawatt of capacity by OEMs and the suppliers. Whether it is the gearbox manufacturers, whether it is the generators, or whether it is the, all other stuff, what converters or whatever, all is made in India today and coming more to India, right? I think our problem is execution. We will be very happy this year if we cross 4.5. It will be us, I think we all will celebrate that. Imagine the celebration we can have if we can do 10 gigawatt. This is the target our Prime Minister has set for us, and we must do that. We have to get there. But 10 gigawatt will give so much of employment, will automatically reduce the cost of energy in India, automatically, and will make it more sustainable. This is the target we have to challenge each one of us to get there. Yes, we need the support, Mr. Jagdale from MNRE. It is 7 or 8 states are involved in this, and definitely this should be a common goal of the country, states and the central government, and all of us. We are equal stakeholders, and we should find ways how do we reduce the impediments to touch that 10 gigawatt per annum. Thank you.
Thank you, Amitji. We all know NTPC is one of the largest power producers in the country. Probably the plans that they have announced of their own additional capacities of renewable energy, decarbonizing their power generation itself. Mohit bhai, it will be very interesting for all of us to understand how do you plan to achieve your 62 gigawatt of capacities? Where are you at this moment? How do you see the market moving in from a NTPC IPP perspective? But I know you have two hats to play. You are also a RE implementing agency. So my first thing is you can let us know how you have set your own trajectories, how do you pursue, and how do you see the wind contributing to your overall RE portfolio? And also probably the next set is, the next question to you would be that you are also an intermediary procurer. You mentioned about your own bidding trajectories going forward. You have assigned an important role in this overall MNRE trajectory. So how are you equipping yourselves, and what challenges do you foresee in achieving that?
Thank you, Dinesh ji. And actually, given a topic of talking about NTPC, we could probably be running much short, only 19 minutes on the clock now. But anyway, so like I started off, NTPC today, we have set ourselves a target of doing 60 gigawatts. And wind is becoming a very important component in this. And I totally echo what the earlier panelists said, that probably initially it was quite okay to do, plain vanilla solar and wind. Until 2017, wind was in fact leading by far. But let me start by saying that probably starting now, so when the government says the Amrit Kal has started, it's also the Amrit Kal starting for renewable sector, and wind in particular, because it's kind of a wind renaissance we're talking about here. Because there's a very clear understanding that wind is integral to decarbonization, wind is integral to growth of RE, if we have to achieve our overall goal of net zero by 2070. Because without wind, in a large measure, which is in many states complementing the availability of solar, so that is important. So with this perspective in mind, what we are trying to do at NTPC is that, I mentioned in passing earlier on, that we are working today on a pipeline of 20 gigawatts. Out of this, we've already commissioned about 3.5. We're already working on another 7 gigawatts. And for the balance 10 gigawatts, we'll be issuing tenders maybe in the next 3 to 6 months. So the aim is that we get all of these projects commissioned in the maybe next 3.5 years max. Because there are multiple disruptions which are going to happen. One, we are discussing just some time back that 2025, after June 2025, the ISTS waiver goes away. So that is one question I'll leave with you, Jagdaleji, that what is the view and how the government takes a view on that. I'm not asking you to obviously give a decision, you can't, I understand. But that is something the government will have to take a view going forward. Because that is also something which is very crucial for the 50 gigawatt bidding. Because many states would be keen to know what happens. What is the actual landed cost when they buy this power? Again, on NTPC side, out of the 20 gigawatt pipeline which we're working on, almost 10 gigawatts is basically round the clock. And I want to make one thing clear, that when we say round the clock, it's firm and dispatchable. We are not talking about round the clock in energy terms. We're talking about round the clock. It is dispatchable with a guaranteed availability at a certain number, with availability, guaranteed availability also across each time block. So that is where we need storage as well. Because I don't see how otherwise people can supply round-the-clock power without storage, only mixing wind and solar. Because that's going to be very, very difficult. Unless until there are some models and Excel sheets which will make that number viable for many guys. So when we're talking about 20 gigawatts, almost 10 out of that is RTC. And in all of those cases, we're actually going to use storage. We are probably the guys so far, I don't know other guys how much storage they have contracted. We've already contracted 3 gigawatt hour of storage already, and we also have in the market bids for another 12 gigawatt hour of storage. The idea is that we build enough storage capacity so that we are able to provide firm and dispatchable round-the-clock power. Balance, of course, we have been winning some of the bids. In fact, out of this 20 gigawatt, almost close to 8 or 9 gigawatts in installed capacity terms is C&I also. And many of these C&I people are now quite keen to transition to green power. Many of these people are into the ammonia system. Many of them are actually looking at transition on their own to make their ESG requirements. But there are challenges, and challenges are aplenty. I think one was already mentioned in 2 different ways. Mr. Chalasani said that wind with land, that's music to my ears, sir. But I still find that not many people are willing to bid, and Amit said land may be a challenge. Land is a challenge, without a doubt. Land and connectivity also. So both of these are challenge. But the larger challenge, and with 2 manufacturers sitting on the desk with me, my ask to them is, can you please ensure that you guys can deliver, and I am talking about myself alone right now, for the moment. I would need to do 4 to 5 gigawatts of wind in the next 2.5 years. So are you guys up to it? Because you would be, I expect you guys to participate in the tenders which we do on the EPC supply mode. Other than that, there is 10 gigawatt per annum. So you said 10 gigawatt, but there is a requirement of more than 10 gigawatts in the market, which is what is very essential. And when we talk about wind, the idea ultimately is to have a tariff number which works for everyone. We cannot look at a tariff which is like abnormally high, because that won't sell. And in fact, I was in a discussion in one of the MNRE meetings, so I think that was made very clear. Indian market is very, very price sensitive, so we have to be sure that whatever the bidding happens, whether it's the APC bidding or whether it's the tariff-based bidding, unless until the tariff is good, it won't sell. So we have to be clear about that we are able to supply a number which is good. Other than what we are already doing, and our ask is, in fact, this year is probably a COVID follow-up year, so we'll probably be doing about 1.5 gigawatts of installed capacity this year. Next year onwards, we expect to hit a run rate of close to 5 gigawatts every year, because that is what we need to do if we have to meet our targets. In fact, the other initiative which we are also looking at very closely is again being spearheaded by Mr. Jagdale, that is the offshore. While we also anticipate that actual installation on the offshore might take 7 to 8 years or maybe slightly longer, depending on how the sites work out, how all the developers are able to actually make things happen. But that could be a good long-term solution. Although I must say that our sites are probably nowhere as good as the North Sea sites, and so in terms of overall decarbonization, the role of offshore will be probably limited, but we have to make good with whatever we have. But it's our sense again that offshore will be something which will probably require a lot of government support, and not only in terms of free transmission and all those, probably at some stage we'll also be looking at some kind of VGF to make it happen, at least in the first few lots. The third piece, of course, is the green hydrogen piece, and when we talk about NTPC's decarbonization plans, so we are doing it in multiple buckets. One, of course, renewables is the largest bucket, where we are trying to create a strong pipeline of green. The other is how we are looking at decarbonizing our existing fuel portfolio, and that includes, for example, using biomass-based pellets to be fired in our boilers. We're also looking at how we can, in fact, we've done a pilot through one of our group companies to convert municipal solid waste into green fuel. So that's another area which we are working on. And the third larger pillar is also in terms of energy efficiency, because we are very strongly involved in not only the government's PAT program, but also we are looking at how we can improve the efficiency of whatever we do. So these are larger buckets in terms of decarbonization. But we feel that while power sector obviously is the guy who emits probably the largest amount of carbon dioxide, we also need to prepare ourselves for decarbonizing other sectors. So when we talk about mobility, we talk about steel, we talk about refinery, we talk about fertilizer, shipping. That's where green hydrogen, green ammonia comes into play, and that's also going to be a larger play as far as NTPC is concerned.
Thank you. So thank you for the detailed elaboration on the plans. But what Mohitji said, I think all of us in this room must be very excited to know that the 10 gigawatt and another 4-5 gigawatt coming in, and the RTC. So I'm sure that the volume in terms of what was expected and what was not there probably during the last 4-5 years, as I mentioned in the morning, it's and especially for the OEM sectors, the other equipment manufacturers who are a part of this session today and who are having their stalls displayed, the kind of volume that we are expecting is tremendous. That's what I sense from the panelists, that they are coming ahead in terms of numbers. But I move on to Vimalji, you as part of the Welspun, and we all know that the Welspun, this is the second innings probably. One, we had a very successful journey, which was then sold out, or overall the entire portfolio was being sold out to another power utility. But coming to you now, you are in fact, before the session you were talking about green hydrogen, and how can the wind especially be an important part of the green hydrogen story that India will come in. So how do you see this? And especially the green hydrogen mission is out, the tenders, the draft tenders are already there, the standards have been issued. Now, what I want to understand is, what would be the role of wind in the overall green hydrogen mix?
Thank you, Dineshji. I think, you know, if I need to summarize in one single statement, green hydrogen cannot happen without wind. The solar, if you look into standalone, give you 25 to 30% CUF, right? But if you need to produce green hydrogen, you need to have a PLFs of 70, 80%, probably 100%, you know, to make it more economical. And the only way you can achieve it through hybrid power, which will happen through solar and wind. And the electrolyzer, the technology which is used to produce hydrogen, you cannot do it, you know, on off. There's a cold standby, there's a hot standby, there are different technologies which is evolving, but still most of the technologies are varying between 10% to 30% minimum load they need to have it to run it. So if we look into, the solar cannot fulfill it. However, the wind, you know, is going to be complementing that. I was hearing in the morning sessions, you know, the Tamil Nadu itself can give 4 months of RTC power through wind itself, you know, which is amazing, I think. You know, that is going to help a lot. If we're looking for a cheaper power, then we need to again look into how we can complement each other. And the grid stability is also going to be in a question. We are talking about more than few hundred gigawatt which need to be pumped in through renewables. Imagine if it is happening only through solar, it is not going to work. The wind is helping to stabilize the grid. Wind is helping to again, you know, phasing out the loads and utilize it appropriately. I think one of the big challenge which we are facing in the wind side is land and evacuation, which I think we have already, you know, heard from the earlier speakers. But on the same time, I don't know how we are going to look into, we have the very good wind sites, which is having few hundred kilowatt to, you know, megawatt scale turbines. I don't know if, you know, as a country, we should start rethinking if we can again repower, reutilize those, you know, sites which is underutilized at this moment. And maybe, you know, I think the central and state governments need to come into. The previous designs were FIT, where most of the DISCOMs were involved. Now, with the center's intervention, that also need to be looked into. So if we look into, you know, this 44 gigawatt of renewable which is installed today, if we go with the today's technology, I think we have, you know, veterans from the wind industry, but I believe it may go 100 plus gigawatt for sure, you know. So the way I look into. So I believe, you know, the wind PLFs is going to improve with the technologies. We are talking about now even 5 megawatt turbines. One of the manufacturers is talking about that. India, unlike any renewable sector, if I compare even solar or batteries, in the wind sector, able to lead the local manufacturing. We have a complete ecosystem. I think, you know, we should applaud that. The credit goes to all the gentlemen, all the industry people, all the veterans sitting here. We are still struggling to do that in other sectors. Even when we're talking about hydrogen, again, we are facing a lot of challenges when we talk about electrolyzers or even from the ammonia technology licenses perspective. So I think we have a very good ecosystem. Amit said, you know, we can produce up to 10 gigawatt. We need to utilize it from 3 to 4 gigawatt of installation to 10 gigawatt and then subsequently 20 gigawatt. I think that is going to help to decarbonize through wind energy. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, yes, wind, you mentioned about the technology limitations, but I think the process is both, all kinds of technologies have a role to play, and a blend of them is going to give us the way forward. So we have around 5.5 minutes, but I wanted to dwell on the role of MSME into our overall journey of decarbonization. So Chalsani Saab, I think we have seen, and I happen to be witnessing the kind of wind that was adopted by the captive industry, by the textile industry, and more or less it was really a very good model that we all had. How do you see what should be done according to you to get this kind of involvement of MSME sector into the overall wind energy growth?
I think if you remember, Mr. Jagdale, we spoke about this even in Delhi. The wind sector is one thing which was born outside the government, unlike the thermal sector. and also born out of the small entrepreneurs, whether it's textile in Tamil Nadu or different places, are the people who started the wind sector. For them today to become competitive, the two things required, one is the captive power becomes cheaper. And the second, obviously, that when we talk about PLI, it's not a question of OEMs, but I think MSME definitely needs it, because when the models keep changing, they need to keep changing their manufacturing system. So how do we, while we keep talking about 10 gigawatts, 12 gigawatts of manufacturing capacity, we're just talking about OEMs. But the OEM's manufacturing capacity has no meaning unless they're also supported by the component suppliers. So how do we also take them along to see that they also become part to growing demand is important. So therefore, one is, the request is we need to look at the way we support them in the PLI. But coming back to your, the specific question about the captive, today, everybody seems to be concentrating on large developers. Every single place is only the large developers. Number of states are saying that, if you win a PPA, if you have a PPA, we will give you land, we will give you connectivity. These are not the people who can actually bid. Some places, they're saying that, okay, we will only give connectivity or the land to the people who are actually going to own the captive plants. But you can't expect MSME to get into land acquisition, go and apply for connectivity, and then say that, okay, I will develop my own CPPs. They don't do that way. The whole concept of CPPs for MSME sector in this country was, they will say that I need so much of capacity. They were developers. Like, we have the biggest market share in MSME sector in terms of retail segment. Provide the complete support to them in terms of saying that, okay, we will acquire the land for you, we will get you the connectivity, we will implement the plant for you, we will operate the plant for you. That's how the retail worked all along. But now that's getting broken because we don't feel the importance of retail segment anymore to that extent, because we're talking about gigawatts. The moment we talk about gigawatts, we're forgetting the people who actually build the sector. So I think we need to go back into that. We spoke, and you've been supporting from Government of India, but I think that has to get percolated down to the state, because MSMEs are basically state-oriented on this. How do we ensure that these people get that support for creating captive capacity, not having restrictions, like go back to the earlier system, which worked very well. And then the other ones, which is what you can do, it is that see that, fine, I heard you in the morning about PLA for manufacturing is not required, but let's not look at manufacturing is just the OEMs, look at the support system behind the OEMs who need in my opinion, PLA, and especially the models are changing constantly. These are two things which are required.
Amit bhai, sir mentioned that the TN state itself is aiming for 1 trillion economy, the country is aiming for a 5 trillion economy. Manufacturing is going to play a key role. Now you mentioned that you have the right set of technologies that you are making it for India, but you also have aspirations that after you really make the model develop or the turbines for the Indian, and you supply them, you also may probably like to increase your capacities to be an exporter as well. So do you expect that there is some extra efforts by the policymakers to allow exports at this stage, or you feel that it's still far away from the reality?
I think India is exporting a lot of wind components. Probably, when we talk about 10 gigawatt of capacities in our component manufacturers and OEMs, a lot of it is being exported. We probably use less in India and export more. My point was on innovation, technology you mentioned about. This is the technology our customers will hold for 25 years. This is what it is supposed to last. And in technology, things happens. How ready is India when we put 20 gigawatt of sticks in the ground, turbines in the ground, that we have the know-how, we have the technology to take care of any problems which arise after 5-10 years. It happens in the turbines. It's a moving item. We were forced, it was not entirely by choice as a company, and I'm now speaking only of Senvion, that we were forced to innovate only in India because that is what was left with us. And and now with the new shareholders, and I'm sure our other colleagues as well here. I am a firm believer we should invent in India, and we have the capability, we have the engineers, we have the know-how to invent in India for the world. And this is what we will do as a company, at least I can promise you, Jagdale-san.
Mantra is to invent. And NTPC, I think we are at 0.00, but let us take extra time with the permission of the organizers. You have been inventing the business models. You talked about RTC. You also mentioned that you already taken steps for green hydrogen. Now, going forward, you also mentioned about your capacities for storage, and you did a large size tenders as well. So going forward, do you feel unless the storage cost comes down, RTC is a non-reality, or when do you expect RTC will become affordable for this country?
So I would say RTC is still affordable. I mean, I think we have to stop comparing, just some random solar number with an RTC number. So RE is not 2 rupees. I think we all need to understand that, and I'm sure a lot of guys do. But there is this narrative that, RE is 2 rupees, so it's very easy to replace coal. No. And we own coal and we own RE. So we know that when any industry or any consumer wants power, they are not bothered about 8 hours solar and all those kind of things. They are keen to have power on tap 24/7. Whenever they switch it on, the air conditioner or the fan or the light should come on. So when we talk about RE-RTC, and I think if I look at the broad numbers, we are very close to, the last RTC bid which we won was for railways. That was at around 4 rupees, 4 rupees 10 paisa. So 4 rupees 10 paisa is a reasonable number, but I do agree, it's everyone's wish that the storage costs do come down, become much more reasonable. Today it's pump storage, going forward it could be battery, which will enable all of us to have a much more reasonable 3 to 4 rupees kind of number, which will in true sense be able to then compete with what the coal-based pricing is today. Of course, new coal-based is higher, we know that, but you look at RTC. But the larger issue, and this is where RTC is a challenge, is how much storage, and that is what you are also trying to refer to as, how much RTC we can do. Can we do, for example, today the coal-based capacity in the country is about 220 odd gigawatts. And as I understand, government has announced that maybe another 30 to 40 gigawatts is at least required to ensure energy security. So can we do RE-RTC worth 250 gigawatts in the next 5 years? I am not sure. We will probably be able to do it in maybe 20 years when battery is dirt cheap and the battery chemistry becomes much more affordable. You don't have to go to Congo or all those places to extract lithium and don't have to rely on China to get all the chemistry. So then probably it makes sense, because pump storage has its own challenges. There's a gestation period, you need to have better sites and so on and so forth. So there are enough challenges, but that is the way to go. But like I said earlier, probably we need to insist upon firm and dispatchable and not just energy terms RTC, because that is something which has been going around, and I've been also telling in MNRE that we need to probably stop eulogizing that kind of RTC. That's not RTC. They are giving you energy whenever you don't want. We want energy when we want. So that is RTC. And I think I missed one point earlier, so probably I'll take a minute if it's okay on my role as Renewable Energy Implementing Agency. So in fact, we already have about 6 gigawatts which is operational in the country. In the last 4 or 5 years, we actually took a backseat from that because SECI was doing, but now government has once again mandated NTPC. So I think already we have issued tenders for 4.5 gigawatts, and our target this year is to do 15 gigawatts, which we will be issuing the tenders. The challenge would be to get the right bids. The challenge would be to actually tie up PPAs for them. And just one point I also wanted to mention for the wind industry, because although technically it is only 10 gigawatts of wind, but it also has 10 gigawatts of RTC and almost 15 gigawatts of hybrid. So actually all of that adds up to much higher capacity for wind, which is why I just wanted to make sure that when Amit said 10 gigawatts, that's not going to be adequate. We need maybe 20 gigawatts or upwards of wind every year delivered and operating at scale with reliability to make all that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohitji. Before we conclude, and last point, I think CMD Tangentco mentioned about, Tamil Nadu as an advantageous state. It has 3 months RTC, you also mentioned. Some other state probably may not. But you have been, as a developer, you like to be in multi-states. What new business models you expect? You see the load following curves and the load following bids now coming in. How are you preparing for themselves? Maybe 2 minutes for you.
Yeah, so, with the ISTS infrastructure and CTU connectivity, it gives you flexibility. So you can have, for the RTC especially, you can have a combination of 1 solar, 2 wind. The wind profile, like, in the morning session has been said, it can vary from one state to another state. So it can complement each other also. So you can put, for the same RTC plant, you can put 1 solar and you can put 2 wind plants also. That will also help. And second, the wind, you rightly said it's not the only thing, but yes, it's one of the critical part of the green hydrogen. We are talking about the power. The power is only one part for decarbonization. There's another major industries like refineries, fertilizer, ships, which use methanol and other stuff. So I think hydrogen is going to play a crucial role there. And to get the green hydrogen at a competitive rate, wind is going to play a crucial role. So I think all this is, correlated, and it is going to help each other to reach to the competitive solution. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing your views. It has been wonderful. What I believe has come out of this session is wind is going to play important role in decarbonization. Some of the challenges that were there have been addressed. We will have to address few more, and I'm sure the state colleagues and my colleagues and myself at the ministry are working on that. But wind has a role. There is a plenty of volume business that we are expecting in the next 7 years down the line, 6 years down the line. So the execution industry has to gear up to meet the multi-state execution challenges so that we do a 2 gigawatt a state every year, so that we add up to at least 10 gigawatts. But as Mohitji mentioned, it is much higher. So there are lots of positivities coming out of that. Green hydrogen will further add to the capacities. So before I conclude, I think when we meet next, and probably Girisa, when we meet next in next 6th edition of Wind Energy, let's celebrate 50 gigawatts of wind capacity in India. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, and may I request Mr. Jagdale to kindly present the mementos to our panelists. So thanking first Mr. Amit Kansal. Appreciation to Mr. Bimal Jindal. Thanking Mr. Chalasani. Thank you, sir. Our gratitude to Mr. Mohit Bhargav. And I invite Mr. Sarvanan Manikam, the Executive Committee member of IWTMA, to please join in presenting the memento, thanking our moderator, sir, thanking Mr. Dinesh Jagdale, sir. Thank you. And then we'll... May I request all our panelists for a group photograph. May I request Mr. Manikam also to please join for that.